the crowded checkout line of a Boston grocery store, a young mother fumbled with quarters, her trembling hands counting coins for a single can of baby formula. Behind her stood a man in a tailored suit, silent yet observant. He wasn't just another customer, he was a CEO whose decisions moved millions. But in that fragile moment, he saw more than a struggling mom. He saw courage. He saw love. And with a whisper that would change everything, he leaned forward and said, "Put it on my card." What followed wasn't charity. It was destiny. Unfolding, Mary Mitchell's world shrank to the sound of coins clinking on the counter. Quarters, nickels, dimes. Every last piece she had gathered from her apartment, even 2 dull pennies she'd dug out of her coat pocket that morning. Spread out neatly in a row, they looked pitiful under the store's bright light. She counted them twice, praying they would be enough. In her arms, 6-month-old Janice pressed her damp cheek to Mary's shoulder, whimpering softly, her tiny chest rattling with each cough. The baby's fever had grown worse overnight. The can of Gentle Care premium formula sat between them and hope. Not the cheaper kind, not the one Mary had always bought before. This was the brand the pediatrician had insisted on, gentle for sensitive stomachs, necessary after 3 endless nights of vomiting and raw cries that no lullaby could soothe. Mary had promised herself before leaving the apartment she would buy this, no matter what it cost. What she hadn't expected was to be short. Her cracked hands trembled as she reached toward the can, her throat tight with words that wouldn't come. The cashier, a kind-eyed woman in a red sweater, sighed quietly and gave an apologetic shake of her head. "It's $24.16 with tax," she said softly. "You're just over $3 short." Mary blinked hard, heat rising to her cheeks. $3, less than lunch for someone else, but for her, an impossible wall. Around her, the line grew restless. Shoes scuffed, gums snapped. A man cleared his throat with annoyance. The store suddenly felt suffocating. Mary wanted to retreat, to snatch up her coins and pretend she had changed her mind. Her pride screamed at her to leave with what little dignity she had left. But Janice stirred in her arms, coughing weakly, and Mary froze. Her baby couldn't wait. Not another night. She reached for the can again, ready to surrender it back to the shelf, when a low voice spoke from beside her. "Put it on my card." The words carried no arrogance, no impatience, just quiet certainty. A tall man stepped forward from the line, pulling a sleek black credit card from the inside pocket of his charcoal coat. He laid it gently on the counter, his movements calm, deliberate, as though this were no decision at all, just another small task in his day. The store fell still. Even the impatient coughs behind them died out. Mary stiffened, glancing sideways. The man was older, maybe mid-50s, silver threaded neatly through his dark hair. His suit was tailored, shoes polished. Everything about him spoke of money and control. Yet his expression was composed, not smug. The cashier hesitated for only a moment before nodding. "That'll be $24.16, she murmured. The card machine beeped, approved, and spat out the receipt. The man slid the bag from the counter and held it out toward Mary. Her pride wavered again. She shook her head slightly. "I don't need your pity," she whispered. Her voice sounded harsher than she meant. "It isn't pity," he replied evenly. "It's kindness. And today it looks like you could use some." Something in his tone, gentle, without judgment, settled heavier than any lecture or smile could. Janice whimpered again, her tiny fists curling against Mary's chest. Pride bent under the weight of need. Mary reached out and accepted the bag, her eyes lowered. "Thank you," she murmured, almost inaudible. The man nodded, then pulled something else from his coat pocket, a small, worn teddy bear keychain. Its fur was frayed, the ears rubbed bare. He crouched slightly, lowering his voice for Janice. "This helped my niece once. She couldn't sleep after her mother died. I carried it for weeks until she finally rested. Maybe it'll help her too." Mary stared at the bear. Her throat burned. Slowly, she accepted it. Janice's tiny hand wrapped around it instantly, pressing the soft toy to her flushed cheek. Mary swallowed hard. Words failed her. Behind the counter, the cashier sniffled and looked away, rearranging candy bars with brisk movements. The man straightened again, gave a single nod, and stepped back. Life in the store resumed. The next customer pushed forward with a case of beer, muttering about the weight. Mary shifted Janice higher in her arms, clutching the plastic bag, and walked quickly toward the exit. She didn't look back. The bell jingled as she disappeared into the night. Outside, the city was dark and sharp with cold. Snow fell in thin flakes, swirling under orange streetlights. Joseph Westridge, the man with the black card, paused just beyond the store's door, watching her retreating figure. One arm clutched her baby close. The other held the bag like a lifeline. She walked fast, not out of fear, but because she had no other choice. Something in Joseph's chest tightened. She hadn't asked for help. She probably never did. And yet she was out there, pushing forward because a baby depended on her. He turned toward his car, a sleek sedan parked under a flickering lamppost. His hand touched the handle, then stilled. The city's noise pressed in, horns blaring, voices calling, but all he saw was her vanishing silhouette. He exhaled slowly, watching his breath cloud the air. Something told him this moment wasn't over. Rain began to fall suddenly, drumming against the pavement. Mary hunched her shoulders, pulling her thin hood over Janice's head, shielding her, as best she could. The coat was already damp, the baby restless and burning with fever. Mary's arms ached, but she kept moving. Then headlights swept over her. A car slowed, the sleek black sedan rolling up beside her. The window lowered. Joseph's calm face appeared. "You shouldn't be out here with a sick baby," he said. His tone wasn't commanding, only steady. "Let me take you to the hospital." Mary froze, rain dripping from her lashes. She looked at the baby, then back at him. "Why?" she asked softly, worn thin by exhaustion. "Because she needs help," Joseph answered. "And because I don't want to regret not offering." Another cough racked Janice's tiny body. Mary's jaw tightened. Then she nodded once. The passenger door opened. She climbed in, clutching her daughter close. The warmth of the car washed over her, leather and rain mixing with the faint scent of cologne. They drove in silence for a while, wipers sweeping across the windshield. Finally, Joseph spoke. "What's your name?" "Mary Mitchell," she said, brushing damp strands from her face. His eyes flicked toward her, recognition sparking. "You used to work at Westridge," he said. Mary blinked. "You remember?" "I do. You were nominated for our Elevate program 2 years ago. Then you disappeared." Mary let out a bitter laugh. "Yeah, my husband left when I was 6 months. Pregnant. Said he wasn't ready to be a father. I tried to keep up with work, but I couldn't manage childcare, rent, boardrooms. It all collapsed. I didn't mean to vanish, I just didn't know how to stay." Joseph didn't answer immediately. He only nodded, his eyes fixed on the rain-slicked road. The kind of nod that said, "I hear you. Sorry for you. I never meant to say I told you." As the car rolled on, a hush fell between them. It wasn't heavy or strained, but respectful, an understanding in silence. In the rearview mirror, Joseph caught sight of Mary. She rocked Janice gently, whispering what sounded like a lullaby. One hand steadied the baby's head, the other brushed at her damp cheek. Rain and tears blurred together, but she didn't allow herself to fully break. Her voice carried through the soft sobs, fragile yet steady. Joseph's hands tightened on the wheel. He wasn't sure what exactly he was doing, only that he was glad he had turned back when the hospital sign appeared through the mist. The emergency ward was unusually calm in the early evening, filled only with the quiet shuffle of nurses and the distant beep of monitors. Mary sat rigid in the corner of pediatrics, Janice wrapped securely in a warm blanket. The doctor had just left after explaining. Mild pneumonia, likely from the cold and exposure. Hours of observation, antibiotics, rest. Nothing fatal yet. Enough to make guilt gnaw at Mary's heart. She brushed damp curls from Janice's hot forehead, staring down as the child's shallow breath steadied in uneasy sleep. Only then did she notice Joseph across from her, elbows resting on his knees, tie loosened. His attention wasn't on his phone or the clock. It was fixed solely on Janice. "You didn't have to stay," Mary said, her voice barely above a whisper. No," Joseph replied simply. She wanted to ask why, but exhaustion pressed too heavy. Her head leaned back, arms tightening around Janice, and sleep claimed her. When she woke, the lights were dimmed. Janice was still in her arms, her chest rising more evenly now. A thin blanket had been placed over Mary's lap. She stirred, stiff, and felt something crinkle in her pocket. Pulling it free, she unfolded a hospital receipt, paid in full. Her throat closed. Joseph was just outside, sipping bitter coffee from a paper cup. He rose the moment she stirred and stepped inside quietly. "You paid?" Mary asked, showing the receipt. He nodded once. "It wasn't much. I figured you already had enough to carry." She opened her mouth to protest, but the words faltered. He rubbed the back of his neck, uneasy. "It's not about pride, Mary. I didn't do it to insult you. I've been in something close to your shoes before." Her tired gaze lingered on him, cautious but curious. "My sister," he continued, voice lower now. "She was raising her little girl alone. Worked 2 jobs, no help. I kept saying I'd do more, send money, visit, call, but I let work come first. I was too late. Pneumonia took her. She ignored it until it couldn't be ignored. Her daughter was 4. Mary's breath hitched. She looked down at Janice. "I made excuses back then," Joseph said softly. "About being busy, about not having time. Tonight I just didn't want to make another one." Silence filled the space again, but not an empty silence, a shared one, heavy with honesty. Mary's defenses, already worn thin by exhaustion, slipped. When she lifted her eyes, for the first time that day, her face softened. "I'm sorry about your sister," she whispered. He gave a small nod. "Thank you." He stepped closer, crouching so their eyes were level. His hand brushed her shoulder, lightly, a touch barely there, waiting for permission. Mary didn't recoil. She let the warmth ground her. With a slow breath, she whispered, "Thank you for staying." His voice came as a murmur. "Of course." And in that sterile room, beneath the hum of fluorescent lights, a woman who had forgotten safety found herself sitting beside a man who had once failed someone and refused to repeat the mistake. It wasn't a beginning, not yet. But it was no longer just survival, it was something more. Back in her small apartment later that night, Mary stood by the window. Janice finally slept, fever easing. Phone in hand, she typed a message. "Thanka. You for everything. I couldn't have made it through yesterday without you." Her thumb hovered over send. Instead, she locked the screen. Across the city, in a high-rise glowing with spreadsheets and city lights, Joseph read the same unsent text she had eventually sent hours later. He didn't smile outright, but his shoulders loosened, his eyes lingering, longer than necessary. It wasn't pity that kept him reading. It was respect, curiosity, and something he wasn't ready to name. But one name refused to leave his thoughts: James Barrett. Something about it gnawed at him. He opened the Westridge applicant review system. Dozens of portfolios filled the queue, but Barrett stood out. Joseph clicked. The resume was impeccable. Too impeccable. Executive-level strategy, leadership roles, campaign achievements. His last post listed, Senior Campaign Director, Westridge Pilot Division. Joseph frowned. He'd never seen Barrett connected to that role. He scrolled, reviewing the highlighted project, one of Westridge's most acclaimed outreach campaigns. Yet when Joseph checked the old archives, the name on that campaign wasn't James Barrett. It was Mary Mitchell, then a junior manager mentored by her department head. Joseph's jaw tightened. Barrett had claimed her work. He dug deeper. Profiles, news mentions, public records. Then he froze at one article. Westridge finalist James Barrett engaged to Catherine Montrose, daughter of key investor. This wasn't an ambitious applicant. This was a fraud, weaving stolen credit into leverage for a powerful connection. A risk not just to Mary's dignity, but to Westridge's reputation itself. The next day, Joseph asked Mary to meet him. They chose a small cafe tucked between two bookstores. Mary arrived in a thick coat, Janice safe with a neighbor. Though stronger, worry still shadowed her eyes. "What's going on?" she asked, sliding into the booth. Without preamble, Joseph turned his tablet to her. Barrett's resume glowed on the screen. Mary froze. Her fingers trembled as she scanned the lines. "He used that campaign," she whispered. Joseph nodded. "Claimed it as his own. He's a step away from a Westridge executive role." Her shoulders sagged, eyes shimmering. "He left me when I needed him most, and now he's erasing me from everything." Joseph didn't interrupt. He let her absorb the truth until her trembling steadied into resolve. Days later, Mary walked through the glass doors of Westridge headquarters. The lobby looked exactly as it had years before. Bright, sharp, self-assured. She clutched her coat tighter but kept her chin high. She hadn't come begging. She had once belonged here. Maybe she still did. Joseph met her by the elevators, dressed in a slate suit without a tie. His calm nod replaced small talk. When they reached his office, he gestured to the seat opposite his desk. A folder waited there. Her name, Mary Mitchell, was printed cleanly across the label. "Take your time," Joseph said, sliding it forward. Mary opened it slowly. Inside was an offer letter, Director of Community Engagement, Westridge Impact. Initiative, flexible hours, on-site child care, competitive salary, direct influence over social outreach policy. Her breath caught. For the first time in years, possibility unfolded before her, authentic, earned, hers. She flipped to the next page. Her name was already printed across the contract. The start date marked only 3 days away. The document bore both Joseph's and the board's signatures. Mary's fingers trembled as she shut the folder, disbelief tightening her chest. "I don't understand," she whispered. "This is a serious position. Why me? Why now?" Joseph leaned forward, resting his elbows on the table, voice steady and clear. "Because I saw you," he said. "At that store, at the hospital, holding your daughter like the world depended on it. And maybe it did. You didn't complain. You didn't flinch. You just did what needed to be done." His tone softened. "And because I've lived the regret of not seeing people like you soon enough, I'm not making that mistake again." Mary's eyes shimmered. Her throat tightened. She stared down at her name on the page, still unsure it was real. "This isn't pity," she asked, more fragile than she intended. Joseph shook his head firmly. "It's not charity, Mary. It's recognition. You earned this years ago. I'm only making sure you're not erased." Her breath steadied, her doubt thinning. She lifted her chin, her voice stronger. "And James?" Joseph clasped his hands. "I won't use you to tear him down. That's not your burden. This position is yours, whether or not you speak out. The board has already approved it." Mary studied him closely, recalling the hospital night, his quiet grief over his sister, the way he had stayed without asking for anything in return. And still she knew. "I'll do it," she said firmly. "I'll speak." Joseph frowned slightly. "You don't have to." "I want to," she answered. Not for revenge, but because his silence made me feel invisible. Like my work, my years, my sacrifice meant nothing. I need to speak where it matters. At the gala. In front of them all. Joseph drew in a long breath, then nodded. "Then I'll stand behind you, whatever comes." Mary gave him a small, grateful smile. Clutching the contract to her chest, she rose. At the door, she looked back once more, her voice softer. "Thank you for seeing me." He didn't smile, but his eyes held a warmth deeper than any smile could convey. The Westridge gala glittered with opulence. Chandeliers poured light across the ballroom. Waiters moved with grace through a sea of gowns and tuxedos, champagne flutes sparkling in their hands. Music from a live quartet blended with laughter and polite conversation. It was a night of power, appearances, and unspoken rivalries. But everything shifted the moment Mary Mitchell stepped inside. Heads turned. She wore a deep sea-green gown that flowed like water, simple yet commanding. Her hair swept elegantly back. She carried not jewels, but quiet authority. At her side, steady and composed in a black suit, walked Joseph Westridge. Whispers spread quickly. "That's Mary Mitchell. She's back." Mary heard the murmurs, but walked with purpose. She wasn't here to dazzle. She was here to speak. As she crossed the room, familiar faces surfaced. Former colleagues, executives, those who once praised her work and later vanished when she fell. None held her gaze for long, and then James Barrett. He moved quickly toward her, wearing a polished tux, a confident smile stretched too tight. Catherine Montrose, radiant in diamonds, trailed beside him. "Well," James said lightly, stopping. Before her, tone casual but taut. "Didn't expect you here tonight." Mary's gaze was steady. "No, you expected me to stay erased." His chuckle faltered. "Mary, let's not make a scene. You lied," she said, louder now. "Not just about your past, but about mine." The nearby music dimmed. Guests turned to listen. "You took the projects I built," Mary continued, voice unwavering. "You rewrote history. You signed your name where mine belonged." James shifted uncomfortably. "That's not fair." Mary turned to Catherine, her eyes locking onto the heiress. "You know he lied. You've seen the cracks. The question isn't if it's true. The question is, will you still marry the lie?" Catherine froze. Slowly, her hand slipped from James's arm. Joseph stepped forward, not to grandstand, but to hand a sealed folder to a board member. Inside was evidence: falsified resumes, stolen credits, flagged ethics violations. The board had already reviewed it. Tonight was only the unveiling. Within minutes, the tone of the room shifted. James was escorted aside by legal counsel. Catherine withdrew, no longer standing with him. And Mary, she remained poised. No anger, no tears. She had not shouted or begged. She had spoken the truth in the very hall that once silenced it. Joseph leaned close, his voice low with quiet pride. "You didn't just reclaim your name. You reminded them what it still means." Mary exhaled, a small smile breaking across her face. "It feels good," she admitted. "Not to be bitter, just free." They didn't linger. The room buzzed with speculation and shifting loyalties, but Mary had said enough. The rest could fall where it may. Her new office wasn't a corner suite. No marble walls, no sweeping skyline view. But within the community, impact division, peace replaced ambition. Warm paint softened the walls. Children's drawings brightened corkboards. At the end of the hallway, a playroom echoed with laughter, where Janice, now healthy and smiling, spent her days. Mary sat at her desk, a brass plaque with her name gleaming proudly. She typed proposals for mentorship programs and community outreach, her badge reading Mary Mitchell, Director of Community Programs. It still felt unreal, but it was hers. She was back, not chasing validation, giving others the chance she had once been denied. Joseph never hovered. After the gala, he returned to his usual rhythm: meetings, investors, quiet control of Westridge. But his presence showed in subtle gestures. A bowl of warm soup sent to her office on a cold day. A book on trauma-informed care left on her desk with a note. Thought this might help. No pressure. J. A plush rabbit tucked into Janice's cubby with a card. Every explorer needs a companion. One late afternoon, with golden sunlight filling the halls, Joseph appeared outside the playroom. In his hands, a leather-bound photo book. He offered it to Janice first, its title embossed in gold, New Beginnings. Inside were photos of Boston parks, hand-drawn stars and trees, and gentle quotes about resilience. At the end, a blank page. For the rest of your story, when you're ready to write it. Mary turned the pages slowly, her eyes glistening. You made this? She asked. Joseph nodded. It's for her, but also for you. Mary closed the book tenderly, stepping closer. Her voice was steady. You didn't save me, Joseph. I saved myself. She paused, then smiled faintly. But you reminded me I was worth saving. He didn't answer. He only extended his hand. This time, she didn't pull away. Their fingers laced, quiet and sure. Outside, dusk painted Boston streets in amber, light. Janice dozed peacefully in her stroller, the book nestled on her lap. Side by side, Mary and Joseph walked into the evening, hands linked loosely, not dramatic, not forced, just a woman, a man, and a child beginning again. Because families aren't always born. Sometimes they're chosen, not from rescue, but from recognition. Not from pity, but from someone choosing to stay. And that choice, the quiet, steady kind, can change everything.